So, first, thanks to all of our speakers.
Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure to hear you. Please, could you present yourself? Because you are not, yes, you are not a speaker, so.
So I'm Jérôme Olive. I work for the Regional Council of Hauts-de-France, and especially in an innovation platform named Industry Lab, and we make services for industry. And I pilot a cave systems with, and for SMEs we do ergonomics review, design review, and it's public services.
And it's interesting because you have the view of a small company. In fact, you work mainly with small company.
Big and small.
Big,
very
small.
And
but today, we are interested by small. But even in big, and if the problem is the same, but I think not exactly. Mathieu, you feel free to ask your own question as we are prepared the session together. And we begin, okay, I'm the bad guy for the session, okay? That's right? And you are the good guy. Okay, we are in 2021, after 1 year of very strange time, very strange period. But we have seen many, I can say adaptation. Small business are well know XR now, but it's more a constraint than a choice, I think. So now we are in a new normal period. I dislike this word, but well, it's not a normal, but it's not so critical than the pandemic. Do you believe that what we have seen in the adoption of XR is a deep trend? And why? I speak about small company. Feel free to answer.
I think the question is like, is this here to stay? Like, is VR here to stay through to the push we got through the pandemic? I would say absolutely yes. I mean,
and why?
I think everybody here, from the talks that I heard and the presentations that you gave, everybody here seems to be a VR enthusiast, and we wouldn't be coming to a VR show in the middle of a pandemic when we wouldn't be believing in the technology. But for the mainstream, it's a little bit of a different thing, right? For them, it's virtual reality still this thing that they don't know how to treat it with or how to treat it, and I think remote collaboration and being on Zoom meetings all the time and being more digitized through home office is only gonna push all digital technologies, and a rising tide lifts all boats. And so yeah, I think it's here to stay. But I also thought that before the pandemic.
I'd say definitely yes, it's going to stay. From the perspective of small and medium-sized industry companies, I think the export question has been there as to how do you sell your equipment abroad when you cannot travel. And that's a very direct question, and the companies had to adapt to this. And people have started discovering that they could do things also remotely via immersive solutions. And in one of the videos, content I was sharing, you have this Mathieu Schiller from Europlacer, one of our clients, witnessing that it was the first time during the COVID that they sent full equipment. So they specialize in CMS equipment without traveling. And they discovered they could do that actually with tools. So I think we're now entering a different period where the workers, we work differently. We know we're out, not necessary to travel anytime, that we discover through the COVID-19 crisis that there are new tools, and this has made a step change for me, and it's going to stay. And people are now really have a thirst, hunger for discovering more.
One thing I would like to add is for small companies. So I interact a lot with the Boston public schools, and what I've seen is even youngsters. So youngsters right from fourth graders roughly in the age group of 8 to 10-year-olds, they are so curious. So I had a small example of where an 8-year-old was excited to design a Google Cardboard or make your own Google Cardboard kit, and the students are so excited to actually view and make the education itself a interesting experience where they can even design the tool they are using and then they can use it to improve their education. So I guess even the small companies, if we focus a little more on the younger generation, as one of our panelists mentioned, we are all excited in this is a technology, but at the same time it has two ends of the spectrum. We have one part of the world saying, is this technology really going to be there in few years, and another part, most of us are saying this technology is going to nail it in a few years. So my take is, for small companies and for entrepreneurs, if we focus on the younger generation and understand what their aspirations are for education, I think that's a huge market to focus on. Thank you.
Just regarding this question, I would say that COVID didn't change things, but just accelerated deep changes. Like people want to work with talents everywhere in the world. They want to be able to communicate more and more. But we have those traveling issues, especially during COVID. But for all the environment concerns, I would say that we will still stay in our companies, but work with people abroad, people in several production sites, and we need to communicate more and more. So I would say that we're just advancing, we're just making progress in more collaboration with less carbon and less physical travelings.
Okay, but remember, I'm the bad guy. If I don't see today XR in every companies, every small companies, why? What's the reason? Is software or hardware not adapted?
First, I think is they don't have time. So, from many companies I was in, there are 10 or 20 people, so they don't have IT guys. They don't have time to test HMD, a new HoloLens, and when I work with this small company, we have some advocates for VR, like ASMIS. It's a health institution in France for work. CARSAT, and they are advocates to use VR for new investment in company, and we make all for small company. It's they use VR, but in a package, so they don't have time to try before.
Okay, it's good. It have to be simple and immediately usable.
Yes, and it's the same with CAD software. If you have to try an exploitation and I miss my textures or something like that, they cannot work with this kind of software. So the best way is click to VR, and if the next CAD software or small CAD software, not also the big one, but can integrate VR directly just for review, it can be a big step for a small company.
Okay, Mathieu, same.
No, just say that if small companies don't have the 3D models, don't have the 3D mockup, it's more the adoption is more difficult. Of course, this is something very easy if you have already a CAD models or something else. But for a service company, if you don't have anything, how to create something without 3D data, for example? So the adoption is easier, I think, for this company.
It depends on your.
We know some architects, or for example, who create their building from SketchUp, for example. And it's very easy, just drag and drop in a VR headset. So for them, it's very easy to adapt virtual reality. But for service companies, it's the adoption is more difficult. So I think the 3D data is a key, of course.
Okay, it's one of the key.
I agree very much with Jerome and Mathieu, because I've seen this a lot when I was working at NVIDIA as their head of virtual reality. The type of companies, especially if they're small, they either don't touch new technology at all, or they have a champion within the team that privately, you know, bought a DK2 or something, or an early prototype, and they then champion, and they then go and knock on all doors because they believe in the technology. But if you don't have that, if you don't have a believer in your team, an enthusiast, an evangelist, then who's going to set up the VR hardware? Who's going to download the drivers? Who's going to make sure that everything works? If you don't have a technical person, then yeah, you're essentially, you simply cannot do it, because it's too much headroom, too much effort, too many resources going into that, which is part of the reason why Eden exists, right? We built Eden Snacker to solve exactly that problem, to make it as easy as possible for anyone to use virtual reality. And then making content for our device is also relatively easy, so you don't need crazy 3D teams and designers. All you need is a good person that can handle a 360 camera, and with that you can enter virtual reality at a relatively low cost with almost no resources put in besides the ideation of the project that you want to do.
Yeah, I would definitely echo his thought. You know, I feel the same way, because I think, like he mentioned, there should be one person who's really willing to, you know, get down, you know, roll up your sleeves and be ready to test everything. So you can see this very space behind me. So this is my Autodesk Boston office. So the first time I had a virtual reality presentation here, I had trouble setting up the Oculus Rift, and then you know, one of my managers almost gave up, and he said, you know, I will just don the headset and I will pretend everything is working. I did not give up. I went back to, you know, an electronics store. I made sure, like he said, you know, make sure the hardware is compatible. So I had to get an HDMI port which actually works with my you know, the monitor and my laptop. I had a Predator laptop. So you know, nothing showed up, and the next day was the presentation. So I got to talk to a few developers. You know, what's wrong with my machine? The software is working but my hardware isn't working. Please help me figure out, you know, I need to do this presentation tomorrow. So I guess you know, even if you're not aware of what the software or the hardware, you know, being a software developer, you don't know what the hardware packages are out there, what the driver update is out there, what NVIDIA has come up. I think it's important for us to educate ourselves on what's out there. So for me, how I see this whole situation as an Autodesk employee is mix and match. I have these awesome software, I have this hardware, and I have every day a new headset is coming in the world. How are we matching all these pieces together like a jigsaw? You know, as we know, you know, when we play jigsaw puzzles with our kids, some pieces don't match. In the same way, in VR, maybe the software is great but the hardware isn't compatible. So I say it's all like, as we are evolving toward a futuristic world, it's all like a mix and match of technologies, platforms, hardware packages, headsets or augmented reality glasses, or you know, even augmented reality watch, or whatever's going to come up in the world. I think it's all a trial and error. And firms, even small firms, there should be one or two person, or even a team who's willing to get down into the field and test it out. You know, unless you test it out, you're not going to see what the hiccups are. Everything looks fancy in a marketing video, or in theory everything works fine, but actually when you work in a practical visualization experience, things fail. And when things fail is when we learn. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, we need simplicity to,
Exactly.
to be clear. Do you have a question in the room? Something to say or a remark? Yeah? Do you have a microphone or no? No, okay. I have the last one.
You talk about a lot of simplicity for small business, and I'm just asking, as Excel providers, if there are other business plan to contact some small companies, because you all said that the only way you communicate with them is software approach and no tailor-made application. If you confirm that, or you think there exist other business model to contact and have business with these small companies?
Take the microphone. Who wants?
Can you rephrase the question maybe? I don't know what the question is.
If I understand, it's about tailor-made application, very created for one purpose only, versus general application, easy to find.
Peut-être sera plus simple pour au moins les francophones. Ouais. Ma question, elle tient plus sur, pour approcher des petits business et des petites compagnies, vous avez beaucoup parlé d'une approche software avec un produit clé en main très simple et facile à déployer, tout ce que vous avez mentionné. Sur la première présentation, on a parlé aussi très brièvement d'une solution qui pouvait être faite clé en main, parce que c'est des productions qu'a priori Spidernet fait peut-être, si au moins je me sois trompé dans le timing. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous trouvez aussi faisable pour un business ou une autre approche pour contacter ces business, ou qu'on reste sur une approche vraiment software où je dois venir avec une proposition simple et efficace et que c'est ma seule moyen de contacter ce genre de business?
So, is there an economic model to fit a solution to a small enterprise? I guess something like that. Or are you doomed to stay with general application to have a really realistic cost, I can say?
I think that one of the big difficulty with SMEs is that the lack of money. They can't invest a lot.
Okay.
And as you said, it's
no money, no time.
And no time. That's, I think, the biggest challenge. And if you want to create something accurate, and if you want to create something new, because I think there is like a frenzy of innovation here in France and all around the world. But does it mean that it needs to be done? If any kind of software does the job, maybe it's better to pay less and to use the software that are on the shelf. But if your client has a special need, and that the software that are on the shelf do not provide the services, then you got something. So it was speaking with the clients and see if it was money, I think.
On that topic, the business model, thanks for the question. We do have, as you could see, we do have two directions. We are a studio, so we're producing content with our own software, and we offer the software for our clients to possibly create their own content. And really, as for small businesses, we hardly know which direction it will take. It's kind of 50-50. We don't really know it. Sometimes it's just studio, and sometimes it's just the authoring tool. It's kind of 50-50. So on the business model, we're on both sides, and we hope we're right with that. And another direction is on the business model, we've learned that the service we are providing must be absolutely perfect. We're not just on the software side, we're not just an editor of the software and saying, okay, you have to, the service you're providing must be absolutely right. You must help your customer. You must train them quickly. You must be great on your methodology, and you must quickly create some value with your customer. So it's not just, and the hardware as well is important. We have quite a few customers asking, can you provide us with some hardware and etc. So they want the whole thing easy, quick, with perfect service. It's not just technology, it's really the quality of service.
Yes, as economic models, now we have to pay for generic software. We have to pay every year 6,000 euro, 10,000 euro, and SMEs can not pay that. So I propose that they can pay by sessions, because many software. When you are in Airbus, or you can use everyday collaborative software or design review software, but when you have only one project by a year, when you are, I don't know, a small special machine company, yeah. You need your software, I don't know, 3 months a year. So perhaps you can. This is for software provider.
You can imagine.
You can
like a pay per use.
Well, yes. Yes, on demand.
Okay, precisely to fit the need. And
Yes, and perhaps if you can grab SMEs with on-demand payments, on-demand, perhaps they will pay more after
okay.
and rent a year.
Just to complete, I see the model, but you have to imagine that the customer know what they want to pay use.
Yes.
Is it the case now for your contact, for your user?
No, for cat company, yes. For yes, people then with I don't know. Like yes, company who use cat files, it's okay. For others, you have to guide companies.
It's maybe the limit of the system.
Yes, yes.
If you don't know what you want.
Yes, but we have many companies like special machine company. I work with 10 or 20 different companies. There are 10 people, and they have, I don't know, perhaps 3 or 4 projects a year. Only one needs there, perhaps. And they cannot buy, I don't know, Sky Real for 1 year for three people. But rent Sky Real for 3 months for special projects, perhaps.
André?
Just, I think that the problem is more the knowing the need, as you said, and I would say that there is also the hardware problem remaining. If you buy a ticket of 1 session, but you have to buy headsets and big graphics, it could be an issue. So we are trying to find solutions to provide what people want, but it's very hard for us. Software providers.
I think cat company is not the problem because HMD today it's 1,000 euro and they have a cat computer. So for most of them, they can use HMD. I think if they cannot pay a program more expensive than the cat program, just to review.
To use it once a year.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I have the example. So we have many companies, they use our Kiev twice a year. So just for design review with their clients. Perhaps they can pay, I don't know, 1,000 euro just for a session, but just one, it's okay for a year.
If I may comment on that, I think it highly depends on where you stay on the value chain. If you're on the design side, on the CAD side, and if you have a limited number of users, probably the model you're just mentioning is what you would need. But again, I was mentioning the alternative to use immersive solutions for large numbers of clients, for example, and maybe just the opposite. You don't want to play if you have a large number of users at the end. So I think it really depends on where do you want to use VR immersive solution. Is it on the design, at the design stage? It's production, it's going to be sales, and etc. You need to really think about the need and who are the users, and from there on adapt your business model.
How I see it is as like, because this whole spectrum in VR, we have different users. We have users from construction, we have engineers, we have stakeholders, clients who are non-architects, and then we have the end users, or the completely IT person who's not a designer. So I would say, like, having worked with few customers within Autodesk, I've seen that each company could have like something like a mini strategy. Identify your needs. What exactly is my project? How big is what's your budget? How many users can you train in VR? How many VR specialized equipment can you afford? Maybe you can have just 2 if you're a small sized firm, or you can have a team of 10. So I think it's very important for us to outline this needs, number of users, how much you are willing to spend on hardware and software, what platforms are actually applicable for you. So even though I work for the company, with Autodesk products, the company is always willing for employees to take a peek at what's out in the market. For example, Google SketchUp and then Adobe Arrow. All these are small packages or other software from different companies which have different export import options and which can also give you the same visualization feel when you're combined with different hardware and software applications. So I think when I think of it from a broad scale, it all falls under your budget and what your need and how big your firm is. So if your firm is like having 50 people across 3 cities, and you have just one headquarters which is doing VR research, you have to come up with what kind of workflows, what projects are going to be engaged in that team in that city, and then split it up from there. So, like one of our panelists said, I think I'm echoing the same thought. Definitely goes back to the needs. Identify your needs and your requirements, your specifications broadly. This is what my project is, this is my size, this is my budget. From there, work it out. Like one of you said, you won't don't have the time and the effort to actually explore. So I would say start small. Like I come across so many CAD users in my support experience when I interact with customers. They don't know Revit, they don't know 3D Studio Max, but they know AutoCAD software so well that they are landscape specialists or designers who have 25 years of CAD designing experience. They are little bit anxious to jump into other 3D modeling software, and sometimes the transition, there is a learning gap also. So I would say just start small, go back to the requirements and then start from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Just go back a few seconds on skills, XR skills, not technical skills, but well, an idea of what is XR and how can I use it in my company. Some one of you said often in a small company you have a person who know, who want to do, but it's quite boring to always try to find the nerd guy or the nerd girl in the company. So if XR become, I can say, not a core competence or core skills of the company, but very important things, how to put the skill in every company, how to put the basic skills. The basic skill is what can I do with, and the ability to write something. As Vivek has said, the ability to write what I want, to write a budget, realistic budget, very basic things, in fact. Is there a magic magic wand to do that?
Maybe it's just a question of time, so in education, of course. But
you say it's about generation.
Maybe that's yes, that's right.
We have to be patient. In 20 years, all will be great.
Yes, today we try to define the benefits. We try to prove the return on investment of these technologies to convince the small companies, the large companies that VR and AR technologies are very important. But we know that these kind of technologies will be mainstream in the next years. It's just a question of time. If you use PowerPoint today, why do you use PowerPoint today? Do you have a return on investment? Do you have this question with PowerPoint?
It's a commodity.
It's a commodity. So VR and AR will be a commodity in the next future.
Okay, I'm the bad guy, you remember? You say in the first intervention that VR and XR is a very old technology, 20, 30, 40 years. And every year we say, okay, in 2 years it will be perfect. Everyone will know what XR could do. But I think I heard the same thing every year. It's always 2 years in the future.
Look at the state of the art with the hardware. until last year, you had wires everywhere. It was very hard to set up, and then you still have some connection problems, and it's still not ready. So I think we definitely have to move forward, and it does a very good job in several parts of the industry. So we can continue building on that. But I think before being a commodity, as you said, there is still a gap, and especially in terms of hardware, I would say.
We at SpeeDNet have been working since 2014, so 7 years on helping people to develop VR and immersive experience without any particular computer skills, right? Even though, and I think we're quite successful at that as we have customers and etc. Even though I like the idea of the champion, and we can see that. And you want, especially I think in small businesses, convince people, even if you have mixed, and you have to make things easy, again, with the tools and etc., hardware, but you need to have someone whose mission is to work on the thing. You won't convince anyone to work on something who is not mission to do the thing, right? So we see that really, you need to make things easy, but it's still critical these days to have a champion whose mission is to do the thing, either CAD reviews or marketing or or extend the service. You're going to waste your time if you're trying to convince someone. It's cool, okay, but it's not my job. So you need to have the right person whose job is to develop this. And probably the thing we have to do is to still be evangelists in having these guys know that this is part of their job to do this. You see what I mean? But again, just have the guy working on that and not on another mission because they don't have the time.
Yes.
I think we also need to look at this problem in like a wider lens, right? There's two things happening whenever a new technology comes onto market. One is the technology advances over time, and the second one is the acceptance of society of that technology. Yeah. And the second part is very much, and we touched on this here, is very much a generational shift, right? Like one of the first VR demos I gave was to my 3-year-old nephew. Don't worry, it was only like a minute or two. But that generation is, for them, virtual reality is just going to be normal, just like we have electricity coming out of our walls, and we don't think about it really, right? Because it was always there, and
it's a commodity, in fact.
It's a commodity, exactly. So that's the societal angle, and from the technological angle, you have to look at the progress we really made over the last couple of years. I mean, if you started in 2014, and many of you have probably started similarly early, my first headset was a duct-taped prototype of the Oculus Rift in 2012. And when Paul Malaki showed me this, I was completely blown away because I could kind of see where this would be going, higher displays, higher resolution displays, and better tracking, and so on and so forth. And if somebody would have told me or you back in those days that we now, only 7 years or 9 years later, not even 10 years later, we're going from a duct-taped prototype or a very clunky DK1 to a headset, and I'm talking about the Oculus Quest here because it's kind of the spearhead of this whole technology train. If you look at that, that's a mobile device that you can take anywhere. You can link it wirelessly or with a wire to your PC for extra processing power. Someone would have told me that in 2012, that this is going to be happening within 10 years. I would have never believed them. So you have to keep in mind that we're making revolutionary steps as you look back at the technology that we had almost 10 years ago. But now looking 2 years in the future, you're going to be like, well, this is not moving fast enough. Because that's kind of how humans work, right? We do understand things in hindsight and in larger spans of time. But while things happening, building the plane while it flies is an experiential thing. So it always moves perceptually slower than if you look at it in hindsight. And so with these two things coupled, just to wrap this up, with the technology advancing really rapidly, like we're seeing rapid advancements in VR technology. The reason why people are asking why has it not hit mainstream yet is simply because that's a societal shift. And for that part of society that is not using virtual reality at the moment, it just needs to become plug and play. They don't, especially if they're at work. Imagine you're going to work and you have to fight this piece of technology. You're not just not. There's other things. There's more important fires to put out. And I think as technology advances, that will take place in corporates and then later on in the larger society.
Perfect.
I think he nailed it. I mean, he's totally reflecting my thoughts. Like today's youngsters are more enthusiastic, and one simple example I'm thinking when he was saying, we had these bulky television sets, and now we have flat screens, so the fat is becoming thinner. And now youngsters, they don't even want like a traditional TV; they just want plug and play. You know, Portable is one thing which came to my mind when he was saying like plug and play, easy, simple. It's no longer bulky, it's no longer heavy. And even our headsets, like we've come from wired to untethered devices like the Quest, but still it's bulky. Like for a person, say who's who's in the late 70s, like my dad hates VR. So the moment I try to put the headset on his head, he's like, I'm having a migraine. I don't want this. But if I do the same thing with the younger generation, they seem to love it. And for them, it's like, like he said, it's just like electricity for us. They're like, is this all which VR can do? Is this, can I project it to the wall? So maybe in 10 years from now, we won't even have, handheld devices. We won't even have phones, but we'll have something like a watch which can project onto a wall. And simplicity is the name of the game. And I think this industry has a huge future. And I'm proud to reflect these thoughts along with this panel. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you have any other question? Okay, just in 1 or 2 minutes, I have a question, because we talk about simplicity, and as you know, Facebook have made great things in simplicity with the Oculus, the second version, for $200, $300 with stores, with a way to use it which is extremely simple. Choose your application, download your application, use your application. I'm not sure to say the right question, but could you think that Facebook could be also a game changer in the use of XR in industry, not only for everyday life of people, but also in industry? Because if my son, as you say, I used to use this headset, it's very easy to think that he will work with the same things. So how do you see the position of Facebook and maybe other giant company, other digital giant company?
I'm just going to go first and try to make it slow, try to make it quick. It all ties into those societal changes that I was talking about. As people at home play Beat Saber, they know the technology, they're not afraid to use it at work. So that's kind of this long-term societal change that happens. And in that case, I'm wearing two hats here. So I love Oculus, right? The meeting I had with Paul Malaki in 2012 that I told you about, that changed my life. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for that meeting. So I love the technology, and I love what Oculus has done for the market and for the consumer market. On the enterprise side, things are unfortunately a little bit more complicated when you want to use Facebook.
I know.
So I just want to add one thing. I don't want to say Facebook in particular, but I think it applies for any company, even my own company. And as a user of VR, like all of us are end users. I'm sure in few years from now, just like a television or we'll have ample multiple virtual reality devices in our own homes, which will be monitoring us. So what I want to say is to just a small shout out to all the companies like data security. I always have this feeling whenever I'm using an app or a Facebook app, or even playing Beat Saber, or doing a game with some the family, your data or your user activity is somewhere being stolen, and you're not even aware of how much data the game company, or the media company is actually collecting behind you. And you don't know whether they're selling their data to another third party or what's happening. So for me, as a technologist, I feel whatever software we are interacting with, or whatever application or whatever game we are interacting with, I think it's up to us to understand, how many of us actually read through the policies when we buy a game through our phone apps, or it'll have a small clause say, your data will be compromised, or it'll be written in a different phrasing, like we are spying on you. They're not literally spying, but they're collecting the user. So for example, if I played Beat Saber a week ago, and I won some levels in that game, and the next week I didn't play, I was busy with my regular office deadline, the app is going to tell me like, hey, there is a new level, would you like to try? So what that means to me is I'm being spied on, my data is being breached, some algorithm is calculating my usage. So I feel as the technology advances, all the companies have a responsibility to protect this user's data, because sooner or later it's something like a black hole where they keep collecting all this data. And what happens, maybe somewhere around the world, that somewhere can even do an imposter, someone can uh, replicate you, or there'll be a duplicate person in the same name playing your game, or stealing your credit card data. So data security is a big theme. And as the technology advances for any media company, I think they should focus on the data part also. Otherwise, we consumers are going to suffer. That's my take on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick point. Yes, as you mentioned, Facebook was a major accelerator of the VR industry. There's no doubt about that. Again, I think most of us will regret that it's been more difficult on the professional side, right? So that's clear. We were discussing, we're very much concentrating on VR so far. I just want to mention for small businesses, my personal belief is that AR, augmented reality headsets, are still way too expensive for small businesses. When one VR headset is above 2,000 euros, just one unit, for a professional device, I think that's still not affordable for a small business, or especially for a very small business. So the trend we've had on the VR headsets on decreasing cost, I think makes them highly acceptable in terms of cost for small businesses. But AR headsets, I think, are way too expensive still. My personal belief.
Okay, we can see. Well, we will see next year if the cost of AR headset will decrease. Not sure for me, not sure. But in 5 years, we could be surprised. Okay, thank you. Many thanks to all of you. Many thanks, Viveka.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. And I think if you don't have any question, we can conclude the panel. Many thanks to all of you.